So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Dr. Shubda Chaudhary, and this is Middle East Insights platform. Today, we are going to talk about academic freedom under siege, how universities are complicit in silencing critiques of Zionism. And for that, we are very, very privileged to have the presence of Professor Ray Campbell with us. And Professor Ray Campbell wears many hats. He is currently a visiting lecturer at Glasgow Caledonian University. He was a teaching fellow in humanities at Royal Holloway, University of London, associate lecturer in performing arts in theatre and performance at Goldsmiths, University of London. He has also been a sessional lecturer in contextual studies in Ravensbourne University, London, and also a cycling instructor.
Yes.
That is amazing. And with this, sir, I would like to welcome you formally to our platform. We have volunteers and members who are from South Asia, Middle East, and Africa. And the first question to you is that do you think that the academic freedom is under siege?
Yes, I do, actually. I mean, I've lost count of the number of academics who've been subjected to disciplinary procedures for their outspoken beliefs on the subject of Zionism and the ongoing genocide in Gaza, as well as the occupation that's taking place and the increase in brutality in the West Bank. Um, and it's, yeah, if you're an academic, yeah, this is a very troubling time, I think, in terms of academic freedom. I mean, if you're a Zionist academic, and there are quite a few of them, then, there's going to be no pushback against them. They're pretty much allowed to say exactly what they want to say. Criticizing Israel's um, genocide and human rights abuses is enough to get you accused of being an anti-Semite without any without any evidence whatsoever. As is in my case, the accusations that were leveled at me, the evidence that they apparently assembled was risible, to be perfectly honest with you. But there are others going through the same sort of thing as me. I don't know if you're familiar with Professor David Miller at all at Bristol University. I mean, he won some damages through arbitration, and the university wants to claw all that money back off of him. And as far as I remember, as I recall, his accusers were the Union of Jewish Students, who are Zionists, and they're the ones who instigated the complaint, and it was supported, of course, by the usual suspects: the Community Security Trust, the Campaign Against Antisemitism, and the notorious GnasherJew. So, yeah, I mean, these are troubling times if you're an academic speaking out against Zionist human rights abuses, and also increasingly if you're questioning the likes of Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
If I want to be a devil's advocate, I can just say that academics are not activists. Why do they have to speak out against anything? What do you want to say to that?
Well, actually, some academics are activists, and I am an activist. I've been a political activist since my late teens. Um, First of all, I was involved in animal rights. I was a hunt saboteur at one stage. I participated in the anti-apartheid movement throughout the 1980s. So I could be on Saturday afternoons, I could be seen outside of Barclays banks protesting and picketing. But yeah, I don't think the two positions are necessarily mutually exclusive. I think my other occupation, because I was a stand-up comedian for quite a few years, I was also an activist at the same time. So, I mean, I was attending or performing at benefits for the Chilean solidarity movement and also the Nicaraguan solidarity movement, as well as anti-apartheid movement as well. So yeah, I don't think, I think you can be both. I mean, obviously there are plenty of academics who aren't activists,
Yeah,
but
the
hey,
devil's advocate would be like, no, it's like university campuses are only spaces for learning. And if you talk about Palestine, we'll deport you because you are coming to our country and supporting Hamas. So
mm,
that is something which has become very ubiquitous now.
yes, yes, it has. And we're already aware of two people who've been arrested because of that. But yeah, I think a lot of people misunderstand the word politics. Everybody is political to a greater or lesser degree. Even when we go to the supermarket and make choices, we're making political choices. This is the politics of everyday life. It's not often talked about, especially by professional politicians themselves.
Can you explain this, sir?
What the politics of everyday life?
Yeah.
Well, it's all the choices that we make, all the opinions that we hold, whether or not they align themselves with political parties or ideologies, are in fact political choices. Now, Henri Lefebvre wrote a rather interesting book called "The Critique of Everyday Life," and in that he discusses the politics of everyday life. So, I mean, for example, I it is overtly political, this particular boycott of mine, but Nescafe. I refuse to buy products that are produced by Nescafe for two reasons. The first reason is the baby milk scandal, which I believe is ongoing. And the second is the fact that the CEO of Nestle said that access to clean water was not a human right. Well, I'm afraid it is actually. Water is, or potable water is necessary for human life, and therefore it is a human right to have access to clean water. So that's just
So,
one of many political choices that I make on a kind of everyday basis.
but because I often also find the cognitive dissonance, in the sense that, for example, if you're talking about BDS,
Hmm.
so to what extent and till how much can we do it? Like, for example, okay, Starbucks, Airbnb,
Yes.
but Meta, YouTube, the entire Silicon Valley, how much impact does it really have? Even the music that we listen to.
Sure, yeah. I mean, my musical choices tend to be well, I don't know really. I listen to a wide range of music, but in terms of yeah, I take your point. In terms of tech, much of that is in the hands of Israeli supporting executives. Executives, is that the right word? Proprietors is probably a better word. Yeah, I have no idea how much impact any of this is having. I mean, I do hear the occasional story that is Israel's economy isn't doing very well. It's mainly due to the fact that they spend an awful lot of money on prosecuting wars against people in the occupied territories, but also the fact that I think boycotts are starting to bite. So, yeah, I mean, we saw this with South Africa. We were often told that, boycotts were ineffective and that they would not end apartheid. Well, guess what happened? It did end apartheid. It was part of a suite of activities that helped to put a stop to apartheid. That, and of course, people refusing to, well, cultural boycotts is, I suppose, is what I wanted to say. So musicians refuse to play South Africa, but also sports people too, with the exception of a very few. I'm thinking here of the rebel cricket, the so-called rebel cricketer of South Africa in the early 1980s. But they were pariahs, those people. Nobody respected them apart from those who supported apartheid in South Africa.
When we turn to 2025, for example, one of the reasons that is troubling for me that only those who can get involved in BDS or can, even as an academic, uh, be strongly opinionated as an activist, um, or even talk about the basic human right, are those that have certain kind of social capital or financial cushioning, because the cancel culture is huge
Hmm.
in terms of suspension, in terms of canceling their teaching contracts, in terms of um, punishing
Hmm.
them for speaking out. Was it the same case during, as you used to protest or be an activist during the times of uh, apartheid South Africa, or your cases for Nicaragua, Chile?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I wasn't an academic then. I only became an academic fairly recently when I started doing my PhD back in 2009, I think it was. And so I got my first teaching contract in 2012. And then I completed in 2016 or 2017. I can't remember which year. I'm getting old. Yeah, so I mean, I haven't been an academic for very long, really, but I'm a highly principled person, and I do use my. I mean, I won't stand in front of a class, for example, in a seminar, and start ranting about things. But if a student asks me a question, then I will answer it as honestly as I possibly can, and as straightforwardly as I possibly can. I mean, it's happened, you know, on occasion where I have had to, answer what is a sort of political question, I suppose. Um, I mean, not just on, Israel, but also on my union activity. So, I mean, I also have the support of my union too. So that helps. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't seek to, use my platform, such as it is, as an academic, to make political statements.
But
But
yeah,
I'm a very political person. That's just the way it is. I remember somebody once saying, if you're black, you're born political, and so it is with me.
that is, but right now, so the problem also that I feel is that we are because there's no sense of, say, for example, you're speaking in terms of a class, apolitically, but the
Hmm.
students can record you and
Yes.
then create memes or create AI or deepfake. Now it's that scary.
Yes.
And even though no one knows what the context is, but that particular whatever can be triggering can be used against you.
Mm.
So, should one, as an academic, be ready for that kind of?
Well, recording somebody without their knowledge is actually illegal, apparently. And if they were to upload that material to a social media site, then, in this country at least, I think they would be contravening the general data protection regulation. Um, but yeah, I mean, people by and large can ignore these. I mean, it's you're playing a game of whack-a-mole in a way, I suppose, because these recordings can be uploaded onto multiple programs, and somebody has the recording, and so they can release it at any time. But yeah, I mean, yeah, this is a very worrying development because I mean it's nothing new because there is I mean years ago, I mean we're talking the 2000s, the very early part of this century, and there was a website where you could go and I can't remember what it was called. Was it Rate Your Professor? But you could you could squeal, if I can use that word, on a professor who was being political in the classroom, and they would be named and shamed. This was an American site, by the way. So this is, a lot of these ideas tend to have their origin in the United States and then they spread elsewhere. So I think we're seeing sites like this being set up in Britain. And that's quite a worrying development. I think the union needs to be made fully aware of this.
And what about the other countries where the union is not that strong or not
Well, that's
homogeneous?
difficult, really, because I know that in the United States, most academics are not unionized. And that's a real tragedy because there's nobody there to offer solidarity and to offer some kind of collective support for those individuals who are coming under fire from Zionist lobby groups and their associates. How we deal with that is a very it's a very interesting question, and I really have no solution for that other than to urge them to either form or to join an academic union.
Yeah. And for example, in India also, in terms of union activities, there's not very strong cohesion, and the data laws are still in the process of being implemented. So the recording or that kind of activity can still go on without any kind of legal repercussion. In fact, it takes me a lot of time to keep educating people that you cannot take screenshots randomly of people's WhatsApp text and circulate it. Even that is
Yes.
illegal.
Mm.
One can do a case, but then again, it takes hours and years and lifetimes and rebirths to get into that kind of legal battle. My next question to you, sir, is that what we see right now in most of the universities, for example, um, Columbia University or Tufts University or even Goldsmith or many others, um, what do you think would be the repercussion of whatever is happening right now academically in the next 10 years, 15 years?
That's an interesting question. Well, it's going to lead to situations, I think, where even some academics may actually harm themselves or just leave academia altogether. Um, because I mean, it's just one of many things that's affecting academics in Britain today. One of which is the very serious funding crisis across the sector. And now we have this as well, this kind of neo-McCarthyite witch hunt. It's going to lead to a good deal of research being binned because of these accusations, I think. Um, I don't know if that's answered your question, really. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to speculate,
Yeah,
really, but
yeah.
it's not very good for the sector in general.
Also, because in academia, there is a certain kind of, um, obviously, it always was the armchair intellectual in their own ivory towers,
Mm,
very neatly manicured away from the real grassroots activism, but still writing papers, still making theories, still being very famous, creating facts and truth, and having a
mm,
lot of gravitas. Um, But right now, what is also something which I find a bit disconcerting is the rise of CCTV surveillance
hmm.
within the campuses.
Yes.
The rise of, along with the mobile phones and everything which students can do.
Mhm.
But the rise of CCTV administration or surveillance that the administration imposes on the faculty, and not for our external security or prevention from any kind of threat, but in order to discipline and punish.
Yes. Well, this is a very worrying development, how the panopticon is being
Yeah.
used to inform on and then discipline academics who apparently step out of line. But, I mean, academics are employed really to, first of all, produce knowledge, but also for their learned opinions as well. And this actually goes against that academic principle, I think. It's very worrying. That hasn't actually happened yet in this case, although I am aware of a situation, I think it was at Oxford, where they were threatening to arrest any academics and students as well who were taking part in anti-Israel protests. Anti-Israel, well, anti or pro ceasefire protests, shall I say, because I don't think they were necessarily anti-Israel, but yeah. I
That,
think Cambridge is also
yeah.
looking into doing that, and there are one or two. I think Edinburgh University as well is looking into that too. So this is, I mean, what are universities there for? They're there to produce knowledge. You know, some people may not like the knowledge that's being produced, but that's what we do. you know, it's like, I don't know, producing cakes. Not everybody likes cake.
Yeah, that's completely, it's like the cancel culture in terms of the social production of knowledge
Mm,
and the impact that it has. What I see in what really disturbs me is that the amount of fear that it creates in the younger minds,
mm,
that before they even understand what the context is. I'm not talking only about the context of Zionism, whatever, any kind of protest. Before they even know what it is, but they see what are the repercussions of it, there is an inherent fear in them that let's stay away from it.
yes. Well, that's how the panopticon works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily they don't necessarily have to put film in a camera for you to alter your behavior in some way. So, yeah, I think, sending out the message that you can be punished for your beliefs, punished for expressing those beliefs in the form of a protest, and then you actually are too scared to even air those views or take part in very peaceful demonstrations. That's how the panopticon works to get you to police yourself.
Yeah, and self-censorship is one of the worst.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how do you uh, deal with what do you have to say to other academics all over the world who are watching you right now, who um, have paid a price for voicing their views? Some of them must have lost their employment. Some of them have must have become pariah in their own
Mm,
social units. They do not have unions to support them. Some of them can be or would be deported.
mm,
What do you tell them? Like, how to give them hope?
mm. Um, yeah, that's difficult, really. I think to reach out internationally, I think, to get solidarity from like-minded people in academia, but also, they may not be unionized, but our union, the UCU, does offer solidarity to people around the globe who are being faced with these challenges. Um, but also, I mean, in Britain too, if you're being faced with these accusations, then you need to look at their evidence and then challenge it line by line. But yeah, I think all I can do really is to offer solidarity and support and then organize campaigns of support, especially if those academics are facing some kind of court action. And, we can perhaps raise some funds on our side to support them. Um, I know that doesn't sound like much, but yeah, it's kind of difficult when you're thousands of miles away.
Yeah, no, it's because maybe in UK things are done on paper
Mm,
and one can interject line by line, but in most of the countries, like especially, I don't want to get it contextualized, but when such actions are done by administration of the university, they are not done legally on paper because that is
mm.
evidence.
Yes. Yeah, they don't like evidence much, do
Yeah.
they?
Yeah. There's nothing in email, nothing in paper, not on paper. That
Yeah.
is the first thought process that goes around
Mm.
to remain
Yeah, I
safe.
mean, I have a habit of saving all my emails. I
Yeah.
don't delete any of them just in case. But then I don't use university emails to discuss sensitive matters. I mean, my union branch, for example, has a policy of not using institutional email to communicate. Nor do we use MS Teams because both of those can be spied upon by admin. So we use Zoom, we use our own personal email accounts. And that's something else you need to do, really. You don't use your institution's email accounts or video conferencing. It's just not a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Also because you never know when it can be taken away
Yes, exactly.
in a second's notice.
Yes. Well, they have fair use, or I think that's what it's called, reasonable use of um, equipment and accounts. Well, many employers do. I know that Royal Holloway does. I know that Goldsmiths does, and so does GCU in Glasgow as well. So, yeah, you've got to be quite careful what you say.
Yeah. And one thing which is also the pattern that I've noticed is that in the case specifically against critiquing Zionism, because Zionism is also not homogeneous, it has many meanings.
Mm,
Um, it overlaps so much with critiquing your own current government's position.
yes.
And then you're under fire from two sides.
Hmm.
So one from the lobby groups and the other from your own political parties, whichever are in power.
Mm.
And has this ever happened before with this kind of intensity?
Um, well, I mean, I could go back to the 1950s with the Red Scare that happened in the
Yes.
wake of the beginning of the Cold War, where it wasn't just the Hollywood 10, it actually became the Hollywood 18 in the end, I think. But also academics and journalists who spoke out were harassed by the state for speaking out against the Congress enacted witch hunts or Congress initiated witch hunts of the period. So yeah, this sort of thing isn't new. It has precedent in earlier periods of our history.
And one more interesting thing which happens very subtly is the algorithm power,
Yes.
which social media then actually works as its own, uh,
Policeman, secret
yeah,
policeman.
secret, whatever, mukhabarat, I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. And the kind of whatever, if there is a post or if there is a tweet or if there is any message that you want to run across, which is controversial, so called. So your accounts can be banned, suspended
Yes.
without any kind of further notice. And then you
Mm,
don't know who can you critique then?
mm,
Because it's not a machine asking if you're human.
mm.
So that is something that is another because I deal with it every day and I study it. And the pattern of that is completely shocking because if there is something about, for example, the Jews in Tel Aviv coming together and protest peacefully,
Hmm.
and to talk about the genocide in Gaza, that post will not get traction
Yeah, absolutely.
because they
Yeah.
don't want others to know that there is a sizable majority of people who do not want what is happening right now in Gaza, but that will not happen. There are
Mm.
refuseniks that are choosing intentionally to not enroll in the mandatory conscription, speaking about it, but that will not happen. The traffic on that post will not be there at all.
Yes.
And this is something which I find very interesting. I keep on doing it, like till what day can they continue the algorithmic machine keep structuring it? Like one day it will maybe get tired of it, or maybe it will suspend us.
Well, I mean, I hope they get tired of it. And I know that, I mean, it is a form of censorship. Let's be honest about it. The use of algorithms to police the posts that people make on social media, uh, because there's the visibility aspect there. Your posts, if they're critical of Israel or critical of, well, Donald Trump or whoever, uh, yeah, they'll be less visible, whereas posts praising Israel's involvement in Gaza, they go to the top. Yeah, we're not as free as we believe ourselves to be. I kind of think of the Matrix here, really. There's that scene between Smith and Neo where there's loads of Agent Smiths, and he's saying, we're not here because we're free. We're here because we're not free. Um, but yeah, that is the situation, you know.
It is indeed. And in fact, the worst in terms of digital protection and all of that is happening to those who are from the occupation itself.
Hmm.
Like, for example, how many of them have access to eSIMs in Gaza? How many
Mm.
of them in West Bank are able to report whatever is happening till they do not have some outwardly media help
Yes.
to get their point across. Um, and that is something which is the advocacy on that also needs to be structured. But again, there's so much of cancel culture that,
Indeed. I was going to say this is something that I think Israel took from the Sri Lankan government, actually, when it moved to, in the final phase of the civil war, there was a media blackout. So we don't know how many Tamils were killed in that military operation that effectively ended the decades-long civil war in Sri Lanka. So yeah, I mean, Israel's done exactly the same thing. It's targeted journalists, but it's also barred journalists from even entering. I mean,
yeah,
even the BBC, for crying out, like the BBC, which is which is in the state's pocket, and which, it when Israel says jump, it asks how high. Um, you don't see very many critical pieces on the BBC. But the other thing I've noticed, of course, is that Haaretz, which is seen as a sort of fairly left-leaning newspaper, has been effectively barred by
yeah,
the Israeli government.
yeah.
So it's the only dissenting source of information, apart from those groups like Bet Salem and others, that provides a counterbalance to the unrelenting propaganda message coming out of Israel.
Yeah, and the entire government funding of Harrods has been cancelled out. Now,
Yeah.
the problem for us that happens is that if you're not a consumer of credit cards,
Mm.
then taking subscription of Harrods is difficult.
Yes.
And then the information is obliterated over a period of time. And the second thing, I think it works in the favor of not only the state of Israel, but of any autocratic state, is also the attention deficiency of people.
Yes. Yeah, there's a
Because
lot of this, isn't there?
Yeah, it's like, completely, like bombarding of so much of information that who keeps a track. And that is one of the reasons why the genocide has been normalized. Okay, 10 people
Yes.
dead today. Oh, 40 people dead today. Okay.
Yeah. It's become part of, as what the situationists might describe, the spectacle. Um, it's our social relations are mediated by images. And we're also distracted by the technologies that we've created for ourselves. You know, silly cat videos on YouTube, for example. Just all manner of distraction
Yep.
and people don't have the same attention spans that they used to. I'm speaking as somebody who has undiagnosed ADHD, by the way, but yeah, um,
It is.
it's
It is in the sense that um, the certain kind of normalization of this. It's human, I think, not to process it,
yeah.
but we are processing it and consuming it on a daily basis.
Yes, people don't like to think very hard about things. They'd rather have, I'm not saying everybody's like this, but they'd rather have their views pre-digested or pre-masticated, as I say, by somebody who they see as a leader, not an expert, but a leader, because we don't like experts, do we?
Yes, that is one thing which is there in the sense because then comes the entire, you are patronizing
Mm,
when so-called, so I use the term analyst wherever when they ask, use the word expert. I said, no, no expert. Also because
mm,
one can never actually intellectually be an expert. It's an
sure.
antithesis of its own terminology.
Yeah, which is
So,
quite richly ironic, really.
yeah, so that is it. And with this, I would really, really thank you for um, your presence. But more than presence, I would, one thing which at a personal level I found very inspiring because it has also happened to me is how you fought the fight
Mm,
and how you are still fighting.
mm,
And it's not something that goes away, 5 months, it's not 5 months.
hmm.
And it never goes away.
No.
And one has to live the rest of their life with the decision of this choice
Hmm.
and the repercussions it will have in different time frames.
Yeah.
And that is something which takes a lot of courage to do.
Yeah, I mean, if it's one thing that I have in abundance, it's courage. I don't know where it comes from. I take my cue from my mother, who was a fighter, and I mean, she was what they call white. My dad was what they call black, and they had a constant battle because they were married in the 1950s when it was unacceptable for interracial marriages to take place. I mean, they were hounded. And my dad wasn't the fighter. My mum was, though. She was ferocious. You know, she didn't take anything lying down. She wrote to Congress people. She wrote to the president. She wrote to generals. And she didn't take, and yeah. So I got that from her. I got my fighting spirit from her. And she always told me um, never to allow yourself to be bullied, you know, and that when you're faced with bullies, you fight back. So that's what I did. And like I say, when I saw the evidence they had on me, my first instinct was to laugh because it looked like something that a 6-year-old might put together. Miss, he's making faces at me. Make him stop. That was the quality of the evidence against me. So I knew straight away that I couldn't give up and that I would have to fight, that I would have to summon up every single shred of courage to beat these people. And I was determined as well, so determined that I produced something like a 60-page document that refuted every single ridiculous piece of evidence they had against me. And it worked. I mean, they really needn't have taken it as far as they did, but because Royal Holloway, I mean, for all their faults, they took one look at the so-called evidence and they thought, well, there's no case to answer here. Whereas Goldsmiths wanted to make an example of me because of this ongoing KC, and I think I need to explain that for your listeners. A KC is a King's Counsel who's like a really high-ranking barrister. Not everybody gets to become a KC or QC as it was when Queen Elizabeth was on the throne. They're called silks because of the gowns they're allowed to wear. So this is a KC-led inquiry, and they couldn't find any examples of anti-Semitism, so they made them up, pretty much. And in my case, it was a made-up case of anti-Semitism. So they were hoping to use me as a scalp to say, look what we found. We found a barking mad anti-Semite. Thus our disciplinary processes work. And, we're vindicated for employing this barrister or this KC on, I don't know how much it is. I know Michael Rosen, who also works at Goldsmiths. I don't know if you've spoken to him, but he submitted a Freedom of Information request to Goldsmiths to find out how much they'd spent on this inquiry. And as of last year, I think it was something like £187,000.
Wow.
And that's a considerable amount of money. And now they're talking about making academic staff redundant and cutting courses.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That is how it starts. I think that is how the entire ideology of this kind of production of this kind of knowledge starts, in terms of how you limit the audience and the speaker.
Yes.
And it's nothing very intrinsic only to UK. It is happening all over the world. And what I can feel is that moment you believe that you know what you're doing, you know who you are, you know your 60-page document that you are working day and night to make, but you don't know who the others are, in the sense of the real faces, the real people, the people behind the machines, the lobby groups. There's not just one person you're fighting.
No.
And often I've heard that, one should be silent because one can never win over an institution. No individual can defeat an institution. So these are well-meaning thoughts, often said, but they do have a fear psychosis effect.
Yes.
So
now it's more important than ever to work collectively for the common good.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, this is just going to get worse.
I think it is going to, there is a terminology or thought that, it gets way worse before it gets better. But I doubt in this case that better would happen in our next birth.
Yeah.
And we are not going to be alive to see it. So
yeah, that's worry.
That's the worry. And with this, thank you so much. And you're really an inspiration for all of us. And I don't know if it's true that if you're Black, then you're political. But I think
it was just something I heard somebody say once, it was a Black person, by the way.
No, I understand. But the point is that what I believe is that today everything is political. Every identity is political.
Yes.
Every bracket that we choose to be fitted into, the conformity that we have, or the choices that we don't make, even those are political.
Yes.
There's nothing apolitical anymore.
No, there isn't. And when people say I'm apolitical, they're taking a political position.
Yeah, that is a political position. And just because one has enough social or financial capital to safeguard them, and they do not need to be invested in it. But the cycle of violence, which is intrinsic in our system, in every system, is so deep that someday or the other it will come and haunt. If not today, not in this case. Today is the Palestinians.
Yes.
What about after 5 years? What about after 10 years?
Well, exactly. I mean, I feel the same way I do now as I did about Chile in the 1970s, 80s, and 1990s. Because I mean, I felt the pain of the disappeared and the imprisoned and those people who died and their families. And I included that in my comedy set. In fact, I was the only person to talk about Pinochet's arrest and what was taking place between him and Thatcher all of those years ago. And yeah, it's the same now. I feel this sorrow, but also this pain of the people of Palestine and Gaza in the face of such horrendous brutality.
And
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's also a beacon of strength. Depends on how one looks at it. By the same time, strength shouldn't come at the cost at which it is coming right now.
no, no, it shouldn't really.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
yeah. So with this, thank you so much for your time,
you're welcome.
and thank you so much for the history of the legacy that you have lived and you'll continue to live.
Thank you.
And my students and everyone here right now is very, very thankful that we got to interact live with you.
Good. Well, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks a
so much,
lot.
sir. Thank you.
Okay.